Believe it or not, you just witnessed something very strange. Yes, me going for a quote-unquote run is strange. Why would that be? Seems like a pretty normal thing to do, right? But is it? Normal in what context? You see, I put on special clothing, special footwear, and then stepped outside to run aimlessly until I'm tired. I wasn't going anywhere, I wasn't chasing after anything, I wasn't running away from anything, I was just running for the sake of it. To us, this might not seem that strange, but to our distant ancestors, I think it would have appeared insane. I've been reading a book lately called Exercised by Daniel Lieberman, a professor of human evolutionary biology at Harvard. And in the book, he tells the story of how he went to study a particular hunter-gatherer tribe in a remote location in Kenya called Pemja. He wanted to study the movement of their bodies, so he had the idea that they would transport in a treadmill and then have them walk on it so he could record various measurements as they did so. But Professor Lieberman very quickly realized that this was a silly idea. The hunter-gatherer tribe walked very awkwardly on the treadmill because they had never been exposed to this type of device before. So when he was trying to record their measurements, they weren't walking normally. It was at this moment that he had a profound realization. We have completely decoupled ourselves from what it means to be active human beings. The fact that we have invented these devices in the modern world to help us run in place stands in sharp contrast to our distant ancestors who had to run out of necessity. Professor Lieberman has spent large amounts of time with various hunter-gatherer tribes around the globe, and the one thing he noticed that they all share in common is that they are all perplexed by the idea that we need to exercise in order to maintain our health. They're perplexed because they don't call it exercise. They just call it living. Reading this, I thought about my own daily habits and how much of my life revolves around sitting at a desk. And so this year, my number one priority is to firmly establish a healthy lifestyle, both mentally and physically. Based off of my own experimentation and tracking, I've found that my health is based off of 3 pillars: diet, sleep, and activity. If you watch my day in the life video, then you have a little bit of a sense of what I eat on a daily basis. Something I try and never miss is having green leafy vegetables in my diet. I feel noticeably worse if I don't eat them, and I think this makes sense because of how nutrient dense they are. But when I miss a day, it's not the end of the world because I can supplement with today's sponsor, Athletic Greens. So I first got turned on to Athletic Greens by being a big fan of Tim Ferriss's and his approach to experimentation and a healthy lifestyle. And I can honestly say that I was a little bit scared to drink it for the first time because of how green it is, but I mean, it's very green in a good way. But honestly, it doesn't taste bad at all. It's super easy to drink, which is a good thing because this is one crazy beverage. I mean, this thing is like a health potion in a video game. Actually, speaking of that, look at these jars I found recently. I should put it into one of these so it is like I'm kind of drinking a potion. 1 second. There we go. That's legit right there. Look at that. Now anytime I need a hit of health, heals me right up. So each serving of Athletic Greens contains 75 vitamins, minerals, and whole food sourced nutrients. Their website lists all of these and provides a little descriptor for each. But for the curious among you, like I am, you can search up each item on a website like examine.com, for example, to get an overview of what the scientific literature says. Ashwagandha here, for example, has been shown to consistently have a notable reducing effect on anxiety. So that's pretty cool. And if you want to check out Athletic Greens yourself, you can find a link to them in the description down below. Thank you so much for sponsoring this video. In addition to diet, sleep is equally as important, if not more. A few years ago, I started becoming very serious about having good sleeps. I would make sure to turn off all screens at least an hour before bed, read a physical book to wind down, and then be in bed at a good time. Doing this consistently made me feel amazing. I would just wake up every day with so much more energy, but I didn't know why this was happening. And what I mean by that is I didn't know what was going on inside of my body physiologically. That was until I read the book Why We Sleep last year. I probably sound a little bit like an evangelist for this book at this point because I bring it up so much, but it's just because it's so cool, it's so eye-opening. Matthew Walker, arguably the world's leading sleep expert, breaks down exactly what our body does when we sleep. And it turns out, sleep is basically like the elixir of life. It rejuvenates and replenishes our body far more than I think anything else possibly could or does. It's so important that a lack of good sleep is linked to almost every disease you can imagine. An interesting example is Alzheimer's, where it's becoming increasingly clear that a lack of proper sleep plays a huge role and could even be the main cause. When we sleep, our brain actually becomes filled with a fluid that cleans out the plaque in our neural pathways. If we don't sleep properly, this plaque doesn't get cleared out, and this can impair our cognitive functioning. That's just one example, and it's really the tip of the iceberg. So if you haven't read that book yet, and if you don't have good sleep habits, I highly recommend checking that one out. I regularly gift it to people, and I always hear great things back. So, by making sure that I fuel my body with good things and then pairing that with good sleep, I have two pieces of the Triforce here, okay? And we just need the third one to be able to save Hyrule at this point. For everyone who that made no sense to, that was a Zelda reference. That franchise is quite literally a part of me. So the final piece is activity, which brings us right back to where we began. You see, I feel as though, at least for me, eating well and sleeping pretty good is fairly easy to accomplish. The hardest thing, I think, in our world today is the activity part. Don't get me wrong, I regularly exercise. I walk at least 5 kilometers a day, I weightlift 5 days out of 7, and practice yoga often as well. On average, ever since I've been tracking it on my watch, I burn a bit over 3,000 calories a day total, including my baseline daily expenditure. So that's all good with me. The difficult part is the sitting at the desk. This is another area I think the perplexity of our distant ancestors would have come in here. They would have seen how so many of us spend so many hours of our time these days sitting at desks. They would say, wait a second, so you're telling me that you sit motionless at this thing for 8 hours a day, tapping your fingers, and this is what you call work? And then to compensate for how bad this is for your health, you go and lift heavy objects that you don't need to lift, or you go and run on a machine that takes you nowhere. It's a bit absurd when you think about it that way, right? Like, imagine this. So let's say you are a desk worker. I'm primarily a desk worker when I'm, editing videos and stuff like that. Imagine you were just sitting at your desk like you normally do, but take away the computer and, you can keep tapping on the keyboard like that. If you did this for 8 hours straight on a daily basis, how do you think your body would feel? Probably like garbage, right? And your mind too. Well, we do this for like 8 hours a day, some of us. Of course, we do have the computer in front of us, so mentally we might be very engaged, but physically we couldn't be less than engaged here. So I think for me, the main area where I'm not being as healthy as I could be is how much time I spend sitting outside of all the physical activity I do. And I'd love to hear from you on this. Do you feel the same way? Have you figured out ways to kind of work around this or work on this? I'd love to hear what's working for you so I can try some things out. Maybe it's getting up every hour and moving around for a little bit. My watch actually alerts me and tells me to stand up every hour if I don't already, but when I'm working, I just get so concentrated that I don't like to stop and then break that concentration. At the end of the day, look, let me break it down for those of you who are still here in this video. I know on the outside that this can appear like a finance channel, but I'm going to let you in on a little secret. I don't care about money. I don't. It's literally made up. I care about freedom in the purest sense of the word. And I care about a threefold freedom. Freedom of mind, freedom of body, and freedom of spirit. But To navigate our society freely, you must master the various social constructs we have within it, with money arguably being the most powerful. That's why I learned how to master it. But what good is mastery over an illusory social construct like money if I don't also have freedom of my body, freedom of my mind, and freedom of my spirit? I'm getting to the age where you generally face more of the serious lessons that life has in store for you. My late generation family members are growing older. Some have passed recently, and I also lost my dog in the past few years. I also see the effect that memory loss and other health conditions can have. And yes, maybe most of this is unavoidable as we age. But I guess I've just been given this body, this weird meat sack that we inhabit for this brief period of time. I don't know why, or if there even is a reason why, but I figure that I should at least honor the opportunity I've been given by treating my borrowed body with respect. And for now, I guess part of that means lifting heavy objects for no reason and running towards nothing.